Imagine the ripple effect of an elementary school teacher helping a kid grow in math. Not only is the kid's confidence likely to improve, but it has an impact on parents' well being too. And say that parent works at a business where they interact with colleagues who perhaps serve customers or design new products. What we do on a daily basis in our work, as leaders, at home, has the capacity to have significant ripple effects on the ecosystems we live in. Today's guest, Dr. Mark Eastburg, helps us unpack the role we have as leaders in our communities and organizations. He is the CEO of one of the nation's largest not for profit behavioral health care providers and spends his days thinking about these ripple effects. In this episode, we explore the connection between wisdom and seeking peace in all dimensions of the communities in which we are planted. Mark, thanks for joining us on the hidden work of leadership.
Thanks for having me, Michaela.
For viewers and listeners, as a reminder, this podcast from the Dupree Center is kind of different. It's rooted in one of the data points, actually, Mark, of our Flourishing Leaders research. And that data point was that some of the stuff that makes leaders best at their job, best at caring for people, contributes to their own flourishing is work that doesn't happen necessarily in the spotlight. It's work that doesn't necessarily happen on a stage. It happens with a selected few, and it's often hidden, which is where we got the idea for this podcast, The Hidden Work of Leadership. And so, what we do is we invite real leaders on, people who are leading in all kinds of ways, right? From the big title, you've got one of those, to people who are leading in much more informal ways. And we ask them questions and we ask them to give us a little bit of a peek into their leadership, their life, and how they've come to think about things. So, first, just tell us a little bit about what you do and about your organization and the purpose of why your organization exists.
Sure, thank you. So, Mark Eastburg, I'm a clinical psychologist. I trained at Fuller Graduate School of Psychology, is what it was called back when I uh, went through it between 1985 and 1991. So I started at Pine Rest Christian Mental Health Services as a psychology intern and have had lots of different jobs here. Just a little bit about Pine Rest. We were started in 1910, so we're 115 years old. We're a full continuum of behavioral health services, but started really by Dutch immigrants who wanted to create a different kind of place where their loved ones could receive psychiatric care in an atmosphere where faith would be respected. And so it was really an offshoot of the Dutch Reformed community wanting to do something good for the people that they loved and cared for. So a farm was purchased. The first hospital was a big farmhouse way out in the country. And we've grown and evolved over time. And today we are an organization with 2,200 employees, about 500 therapists, 100 beds, hospital beds, about 100 residential treatment beds of different kinds, 20 outpatient clinics. Our budget is for next year is going to be about $250 million. And so we've become a very large organization. I like to say we've grown, not because we've seek to grow, but because we've grown really adapting to what the community needs over the last 115 years. So it's a real honor to serve in this role, something I never thought I would do when I was learning tests and measures from Richard Gorsuch at Fuller. But it's been a great opportunity for me to learn and grow.
Wow, I actually didn't realize that Pine Rest was 115 years old, and I'm always amazed at just the stories that immigrant communities, the institutions they build, and how that has changed sort of the fabric of society. So that actually, I'll also follow up questions there that I'll reserve for another time. But Mark, we have lots of different people in common, right? We have some folks from Fuller, from Pine Rest, from the Dupree Center, just from folks from West Michigan. And you and I are just getting to know each other in some ways, but there's a couple of qualities that I observe about you as a leader, and I want to check those with you. I want to see if you think those are accurate and if people who know you better than I know you would describe your leadership in a different way. It feels to me like you lead with this dual sense of conviction and humility. Does that feel right to you? Would you describe it in a different way? How would people who know you best describe your leadership style?
Yeah, I think that's roughly a good description. Uh, I wouldn't do this job anywhere else.
Mm,
I'm in this role that speaks to the conviction part. I wouldn't do this job in any other organization. To me, what's really precious about Pine Rest, what really resonates with me, is the fact that Pine Rest has been over the last 115 years committed to both professional excellence and keeping up on research and best practices and evidence-based care, but also open to the resources of faith and spirituality, and um, living that in throughout the values of how we provide care and what we engage patients around. So that is my conviction, and so that's something I talk about a lot in different contexts in different ways, depending on the staff or sometimes patients that I meet with. The humility part, I don't know about that, but as I mentioned earlier, I never thought I would be in this role. I never sought this role. Um, I uh, belie think every day I'm here because God put me in this position despite my weaknesses, despite my uh, shortcomings, the skills that I lack, but has I have a fantastic team that makes up for those shortcomings, deficits, and together we've been really successful in serving our community.
mm. I mean, even that, it's refreshing to hear anyone talk about, like, okay, it's a team sport, and there are deficits. You have gifts and strengths and values to add there as well. I just want listeners to kind of hear a bit of that before I ask the next question because I think that's some context setting. So you and I have gone back and forth a little bit about the idea of flourishing. That's a word I've already mentioned. It's something that the Dupree Center cares about. Flourishing can, with everybody from psychologists to theologians to other aspects of social science have definitions and meaning and outcome connected to all of this. And you were talking about why you think it's so important for organizational leaders to have their own working definition or an organizational working definition of flourishing. But you called it something a little bit different. You called it movement toward good ends. So I'm wondering if you can unpack just first what you mean by movement toward good ends.
Yeah, so I think of flourishing and good ends as very closely related. So I think every organization has or should have a purpose. And flourishing in my mind is a helpful concept to me when I think about, uh, especially for nonprofit healthcare, not for profit healthcare, because I think at the end of the day, we want people to flourish. We want people to get well. And so, where I expand on that a little bit in my thinking, of course, we're focused on helping individuals come, and the medical model forces us to think in terms of an individual. When people come to us, we give them a medical record number. When a
Mm,
couple comes to us, the system forces us to give one of those members of the couple a medical record number. It's very individualistic focused, and we want people, to thrive as individuals. But I also think about how an organization has a role in helping the community flourish. So by helping individuals, we also help the broader community flourish. And the more I've thought about that as a goal, the more um, I've been inspired by the idea that beyond our individual patients that we serve about 350,000 patients a year. We really have a role in the whole ecosystem of the community. And and then I would connect that term to the whole idea of shalom.
Hmm.
So that's my basic framework. Um, and I can unpack both the individual side and the organizational side. And if you like, at
I
some
would
point,
like first, and like to, I'm going to theologically put you on the spot for a moment. So, for anyone who's listening or is watching that doesn't know what the word shalom means, Mark, what is that? What is it? What do you mean when you say that?
yeah. So it's a concept that appears throughout the Old and New Testament, and it, even in modern day Israel, when people greet each other, they say shalom, which means peace, but it's a very rich term. It means peace at all dimensions. It's
Mm,
peace, internal peace, of peace between brothers and sisters. All is well with the community. It means everybody is being uh, cared for in the community. Sort of this overall well community, and a real picture, I think, also of what the kingdom of God, you know, w- will become as it evolves into its fullness. So it's a comprehensive term, but it's also an individual term.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, and the thing that I've always appreciated about this picture is if you look through the biblical stories and this idea of shalom and through the Jewish tradition, it's not the kind of peace that happens instead of conflict or instead of justice. It's the kind of peace and well-being that can handle the hard stuff, right? You sort of go through the hard stuff and you find this wellness, this well-being, this communal connection, sometimes on the other side. And so it's a powerful biblical and theological word, and one that inspires a lot of hope. Okay, so yes, now unpack for us. You said, okay, there's these individual and there's these communal, maybe even familial in the middle. I'm not sure exactly how you think about it, but unpack for us what you mean at those different layers of care and people.
Sure. So when I think of Pinehurst Christian Mental Health Services caring for individuals, that's pretty obvious. We help people recover from depression, manage psychosis, manage serious mental illness. But in my view, the medical model falls a little short because, at Fuller, first class we have in psychopathology, and we open the DSM and we learn about the different diagnoses. And every diagnosis has a set of criteria. And that really gets modeled in how the medical model works. So if somebody comes in, they have a set of symptoms, they have a level of functioning score, and our job, the way we get paid by insurance companies, is to reduce those symptoms, help them become more manageable. And so somebody might come in with a PHQ 9 score, which is a depression screener, of 15, and they go to 8, and treatment has been successful. But if you're a human being and you're seeking care, your goal is not particularly a lower PHQ-9 score. That's a great result.
Hmm.
But you want to be able to have the energy to engage your kids again when they want to go for a bike ride. If you're an adolescent, you want to have the confidence to go back to school and make friends. You want to be able to go fishing with your grandpa and not be pulled back by depression or fear or anxiety. Um, you want to be able to to get a job again after you've been struggling with anxiety and can't get out of the house. So the medical model is good in its place, but I think flourishing is a notion that life is a lot richer than that, and
Hmm.
it involves health and having adequate housing and food security and safety and educational opportunities and relationships, including family. And so, I think one of the ways that the term flourishing does, or the concept of that people are wanting more, it pushes us beyond the medical model and it helps us ask our patients, what is it that you want from your life? Which isn't necessarily a question that insurance companies
Right.
care about.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's powerful. So a theme that we're exploring in different ways this season, this podcast is wisdom. And when I hear you talk, I'm like, wow, is this kind of a different way that leaders can think about outcomes? Is this domain specific to healthcare or not for profit work? So I'm going to get back to those questions in a second. But to inform that, I'm just curious how do you see this kind of flipped or more than? I feel like a more than. How do you see it impacting your community? Like, are you able to track those kind of results? Do you hear stories anecdotally? What is happening because you're focused on more than just improving deficit, but instead aiming for the well-being and flourishing of people?
Yeah, well, that question sort of leads into what's our larger impact on the community?
Mhm.
And what I've come to feel more and more strongly about is that one of our roles as a nonprofit owned by the community, is to strengthen the institutions that are so important to the overall well-being, the flourishing of the whole community, to see the peace and prosperity of the city in which we've been placed. Because uh, businesses are key to
Mhm.
having economic strength, so people can afford housing, they can afford food. So one of our roles at Pine Rest, I believe, is to help strengthen the businesses in the community through our support of their employees.
Mm, mm,
When I meet with business leaders, I'll often say, I work for you because you're the ones that pay the premiums, the healthcare premiums that pay my salary.
hmm,
You pay taxes that go into Medicaid. Your employees pay taxes that come from you. And so I want you to be successful. I need you to be successful. And hopefully, my side of the bargain is that by helping strengthen your employees, helping them have a good life, that will help your business.
yeah.
And so you'll have a tool and die operator that is fully present at work or not missing work because of because he's feeling healthier.
Mhm,
You'll have a teacher who's fully present and not needing a month off for a substitute teacher because
mhm,
she's been empowered to go back to the classroom. So those are all really
mm,
important ways in which I think we strengthen institutions. And if those institutions are functioning well, then the mental health of the community improves. I mean, put me on the street without housing, and I'm not going to be doing very well in a few
yeah.
days on lots of different levels, including emotionally. So it's all interconnected, and
Mhm,
we see the results when particularly during hard economic times where we be people that we care for sort of become the canary in the coal mine around uh, the pain that people are experiencing economically.
mm. As you're talking, Mark, first of all, this is really beautiful. I don't. It's just a really interesting and encouraging and thought provoking way to describe your work. I also think about the other institutions. I think about like the institution of the family, right? And then all of a sudden you've got mom or dad that's home, and then kids are on time to school. And I think about the institution of schools and how people are performing better because they had breakfast because parents were engaged, and it just all the layers and layers, and we're able to contribute to sports and church and all of those things. I think the thing I want to zoom out for listeners and say and think about is okay, so maybe you manage a small team, maybe you have no direct reports and you work collaboratively with somebody. Maybe you are a teacher at a school. I mean, just all the different domains we have people in. Mark, what I think you're encouraging us to do, and this is what I want to check with you, is to whatever extent it's possible that we're measuring the success of that which is entrusted to our care interdependently with other related aspects, whether it's other people, other institutions that plays out in a particular way for Pine Rest. But I mean, that's a pretty provocative way to think about measuring our results as leaders and as workers.
Yeah, I think so. So let's take your teacher example. So a teacher has a direct daily impact on a student. But I mean, you as a parent know, and I as a parent know, if that student is thriving in their school situation, I'm feeling better. When one of my kids has really struggled in a school environment, I'm sitting at my desk here and I can't think about anything else if I'm worried about them. And now, as a grandparent, I have that extra layer. And so, yes, a teacher is helping a child, but uh, that teacher has so many more impacts across the whole ecosystem of the community. And if I'm not worried about my child, then I'm more focused at work and I do a better job at work. And frankly, I'm easier to get along with at work because of that. So
Mhm.
the ripple effect, anyone who works with people, I think can be encouraged whether you're a member of a small team in leadership or not. Your work has implications throughout really the community that you impact. And I think that's really inspiring. That gives us a deeper sense of meaning and purpose um, than looking maybe just at the narrow job that we do every day.
Hmm. I also, as you're talking, think it gives us a sense of agency. There is so much that happens. I'm thinking about Stephen Covey's classic circles of control, influence, and concern. And for those listening, the smallest circle is things we actually can do something about. The next circle out is something we might have a little influence over, but we don't really make the call at the end of the day. And finally, it's the circle of concern, things that are on our mind. And its statistics would say that people spend 80% of their energy on that outermost circle, the circle of concern in which they can't really do much. But what you're talking about here is a very hopeful paradigm shift that says, okay, I actually have a lot of agency in how I treat other people, how I seek the best for them, how I show up and imagine the ripple effects of my own impact, and that's a vital part of the fabric of our community, of our city, of our neighborhood, of our world. I mean, just on and on and on. So I find that to be a very hopeful reframe. So thank you.
Yeah. And I think as a leader, I know probably a lot of your listeners are leaders. Um, we have a special opportunity because we're often looked to uh, as somebody that is important in people's worlds. I when I'm walking around our campus here and I greet people, sometimes I can be so focused. I'm just on my way to the conference room and I don't notice somebody. But realizing that if I take the time to greet somebody, say hello to them, maybe ask them a question, um, that that's a gift for some people. Some people really feel honored by that, and it's not Mark Eastburg, it's the CEO talked to me. And I think we're given that mantle of leadership to give it away like that. It's free. You can do so much good with it while you have it. Eventually, you'll put it down, you'll just be Mark again, but use it for good while you have it because, um, it's not that much work. It just needs often paying attention.
Hmm. Hmm. There is a great author. Her name is Ruth Haley Barton, and she actually talks about the practice of paying attention. And it's cultivating the muscle is to do exactly what you just described, which is like, I mean, you have a very long to-do list. You have a lot of people who need your attention, and yet realizing that you inhabit a role in which the ripple effect of you stewarding that role for the good of the people, right? That flourishing starts right when in the hallway when you see somebody. And yeah, that's really wonderful. One of the other things that as you're talking that it makes me think about is, you're working with individuals. Pine Rest has a you describe kind of your community impact, but you're leading an organization that every day is going to work on challenges and problems that are like bigger than you all, that are in some ways unsolvable. And I'm thinking about I feel like I encounter more and more leaders where this feels like part of their charge. They're trying to take on a big problem. They see the extra layers, even if they're in tech, they see, "Oh, we got to deal with humanity because we got AI, just layers and layers and layers."
Mhm.
What would you say, just from your own learning and experience, to kind of that piece? How do we, as Christian leaders, as Christian leaders in the marketplace and nonprofit sectors, think about our role in light of these bigger problems that feel like they're looming?
Yeah, that's a great question, Michaela. And I think maybe the simple, maybe overly simplistic answer, one person got one talent, one person got 3 talents, one person got 5 talents, and it's about what you do with the talent that you have. And so, yes, we have a big impact because 'cause we're a large organization, but there are mental health needs in the state of Michigan that we're just not gonna be able to solve. There are people that we would love to serve but if we tried, we would quickly not be financially sustainable. So, always looking for that balance, um, and being okay with that, living with that, um, can it can be challenging if the need is glaring, uh, but ultimately being at peace with that. Mm. The other thing it does is it forces you or to think or us to think as leaders, okay, I'm not going to be able to solve that, but who can I partner with that we can do more together? So yesterday we had a board of directors meeting for Pine Rest, and we had Elizabeth Hertel, who's the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services director, come in and talk with the board about what's going on in Michigan. And the relationship we've had with the MDHHS, is what it's called, has been really productive. Uh, for example, during COVID, they called us and said, there are psychiatric patients with COVID. There's no place for them to go. Could you start a COVID unit for people with uh, psychiatric challenges and COVID? And so we had this great discernment process, and we said yes. We're caring for a group of adolescents who, many of whom have experienced lots of abuse and neglect. That was, this private public partnership. And so we would never be able to do that on our own, and the state would be challenged to do it on their own. So together, the cliche 1 + 1 = 3. So those big unsolvable problems, we can go a lot further if we're willing to say, uh, "Let's work together. Let's collaborate with somebody. Let's work together on it."
Okay, there's the conviction and humility. That's when you talk, I feel really inspired. I feel like you've got this big vision of what's possible, um, but your own very realistic sense of agency, given your and responsibility and stewardship in your role, and the vital work of collaboration and the reality of interdependence. And that's the only way that big goal is possible, which is honestly refreshing. It feels kingdom minded. It feels I want to say and hope that it's a distinctively Christian way to lead and work. Um, okay, I have one more question for you, and it feels wise. I mean, again, like this episode is really about giving you as listeners and hearers a picture of what wisdom looks like embodied. I want to ask just the one question, one final question about this idea of wisdom, right, kind of right on the nose.
Yeah.
So we live in an increasingly complex world, right? And I mean in every way, from all the things we've been talking about to just being more connected to being more divided. I mean all the layers. When you think about what a wise leader looks like in today's landscape, what do you imagine? Help us picture and help other people hear from your seat what kind of attributes we should be practicing as wise Christian leaders.
Yeah. So obviously, brilliant people have been thinking about wisdom, talking about wisdom, writing about wisdom for thousands of years, literally. I guess, knowing that we'd probably be talking about wisdom, I did some reflection. From my point of view, wisdom when I'm at my best is it's honestly looking at a complex situation, taking in all the facts, filtering those facts through your values and your goals, which is for us community flourishing, deciding a course of action, and then moving forward.
Hmm.
And sometimes
Hmm.
that's done individually in the hidden work of leadership. Sometimes it's done as a group together, and I think groups can be very wise too. So complex situation, gathering facts, filtering through values, and then taking action. That's how I
Hmm.
think about wisdom.
Let me
And
just see if I can. Oh, go ahead.
and a lot of that work happens quietly behind the scenes. I love your phrase hidden work of leadership where at least I don't think quickly. I have to sit back and reflect and think what is really going on here? What's the reality of the situation? You know, Max Dupree, who your institute is named, was fond of saying, a leader defines reality. So, linking to your question, a leader unflinchingly looks at what's the situation we're in, taking in all the facts, and then um, telling what story does this tell that leads us to action. So, and a lot of that works quietly behind the scenes. Sometimes it happens with lots of other people around as people are discussing and arguing. Sometimes it happens for me um, in the redwoods in California of a week of reflection. Um, but very often for leaders, it's a solitary task that you you have been tasked uh, to do that quietly, reflectively.
Hmm. Hmm. What I appreciate there is that I think you dial down the pressure to move quickly. Um, and it doesn't mean that certain situations don't need quick responses, right? But oftentimes the things that need the quick, yeah, sometimes you got to move quick, right? So I'm not discounting those very real, especially crisis situations, which hopefully we've been trained for. I think about, kind of your instincts and your virtues kick in crisis. But what you just described, I think, is a bit of a bit of a pause to say, hey, I'm going to take in, or we are going to take in, the right people are going to take in information. We're going to, this is just really important. We're going to filter it and measure it against values, goals, right? You've talked a lot about community flourishing and how that goes from the individual all the way to the multi-institutional reality you find yourself in. And then we're going to move. And that is very simple and very helpful. Mark, it is just a pleasure to hear the way you think. I appreciate the way that you've led us into your work and your world. And thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun to have this conversation, Michaela.
Thank you for tuning in to the hidden work of leadership. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and found it insightful. The Hidden Work of Leadership is brought to you by the Max Dupree Center for Leadership at Fuller Seminary, where we envision a world in which leaders across industries and seasons of life are deeply formed as the people of God so that they might seek the very best for the people and systems entrusted to their care. Our episodes are produced by Justin Heap, who ensures our engineering and editing is engaging and sounds just right. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, rating, and reviewing us on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us reach more listeners like you. You can also follow the Dupree Center on LinkedIn and Instagram for updates and behind-the-scenes content. For more information about today's episode and access to additional resources, visit our website at dupree.org. That's DEPREE.org. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on The Hidden Work of Leadership.